Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's January the 6th, 2014, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, has Fukushima radiation already hit the California coast? Then, crisis as U.S. sailors gain cancer from the Fukushima cleanup. That's next on the Infowars Nightly News.
We know we're under attack! We know it! We're breaking the conditioning!
Well, there's a lot of snow falling around the country right now. As a matter of fact, record amounts in some areas. We're going to be talking about that later in the show, but it's not so much the quantity as it is what's in the snow. We have a report from Paul Joseph Watson that Missouri snow found to contain radiation that's double the normal amount. Now, this is from a YouTube video, and the person who posted it said the radiation return from the snow precipitation is returning double the normal background amounts. And he said that this is from the snowfall because this happened right after the snowfall. He said this means that small particles of radioactive material are indeed coming down in the precipitation. Past tests showed about 30 counts per minute in the same spot on a nice day with no precipitation. He added that this also happened with snowstorms in 2012. Now, someone else put up a video that has now gone viral with about 500,000 hits, showing a five-fold increase, 500% increase in California on the beach. This is another article by Paul Joseph Watson. Has Fukushima's radioactive wave already hit California? In this Geiger counter reading, the background radiation levels at San Francisco were 5 times the normal safe level. And so what's going on? We see these individual reports coming out, but we don't see anything from the officials. Now, when an official was asked, this is what he had to say. This is County Environmental Health Director Dean Peterson, and he said he wasn't convinced of any link to Fukushima. He said it might be things like red painted disposable eating utensils. Now, I looked that up. I couldn't find anything at all about red paint or utensils being radioactive. You would think that if that were a concern, the EPA would be all over that. They would either ban the paint or ban the utensils, whatever it was that was causing it. I looked at the EPA, and what they said was as recently as the 1930s, that Fiestaware used uranium oxides to create the distinctive orange-red color of its dinnerware. Is that what he's talking about? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense that he would talk about that. Maybe he was just being flippant. But that's the kind of stuff that we're seeing from officials. So this can take a lot of forms. The government can just ignore it and be silent about it. They can get the media to help them out about it. They can ridicule it, as we just see this county health inspector do. But they can also distort the statistics. Now, a good example of that is this Forbes story here, where they talk about, this is a quote from the story, it said, the oceans have tritium in them. In the Pacific Ocean, the radiation from tritium is 370 pecabecquerels, or 370,000 trillion becquerels. Now, that's an argument that distorts the quantitative risk, because you don't take this amount of the radiation that's coming out of Fukushima is not evenly distributed over the entire Pacific Ocean, of course. It's concentrated in some areas. So in those areas, it's going to be much higher than it is over the entire Pacific Ocean. Or they can distort it by talking about the quality of the radiation. They can talk about background radiation instead of talking about ionizing radiation. Or they can just come out and push back against us and saying that they're going to debunk it and actually lie and spin what we're saying. And that's exactly what we saw happen in this story, debunking our report of last week from Natural News. Now you can see this article here. He's got the video. Looks like the video is embedded, but actually if you click on it, it doesn't do anything. It's just a picture because he doesn't want you to see the video. He wants to tell you what he thinks we're telling you. And what he said is, you can already see the story's not being reported at all accurately by Jones, etc. The story has nothing to do with Fukushima and instead is about the effects of global warming on the ocean. Well, that's not true. What we reported was an exact quote from the National Geographic, and it said in March 2012, less than 1% of the seafloor beneath Station M was covered in dead sea salps. And it says now by July the 1st, more than 98% of it was covered by the decomposing organisms. The major increase in activity of deep sea life in 2011 and 2012 were not limited to Station M, though. Other ocean research stations reported similar data. So what caused this increase in dead sea life covering the floor? And it's not located to just one area. As a matter of fact, that article did try to tie it into global warming, but that was their inference from the data. Our inference from the data is that it makes more sense to tie it to Fukushima. Why? Because global warming isn't happening. And it is certainly not happening in the time frame that we see this dead sea life happening. So we have the data, and we say we have dead sea life on the bottom of the floor. We also have a nuclear accident. So we're making a correlation. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a direct cause, but it is a sufficient correlation. There is no correlation to global warming. That's not happening. They also criticize us, interestingly enough, by saying that this was only happening in one area. No, the report said that it was other ocean research stations reported similar data. So it's not just localized in one area. If it were localized in one area, why would they think that it was a symptom of global warming? If it was global warming, wouldn't it be in every ocean? So you can see how this information is being distorted and twisted. This was actually a report from the journal, The Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Now, this was also data that was collected by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. So the bottom line is that we look at this data of the increased dead sea life at the bottom of the ocean, dramatic increase. They say it's due to global warming, although there is no global warming for the last 17 years, although we have a record Arctic ice flow going on now. As a matter of fact, we have global warming scientists who have been trapped at the Arctic for quite some time, and the rescue ships have been trapped trying to get them out of there. So that's not happening. So we don't see a causal relationship there, but the timing is significant. He criticizes us for saying that these dead fish came around about a year after Fukushima, but that's exactly what we would expect. You don't die right away from radiation, but sea life as well as animal life dying within a year or two of this exposure is kind of a canary in a coal mine. Looking at this article from the BBC, they ask, why are Japan's Fukushima 50 still remain unknown? And that's a good question. Actually, they're prohibited from talking to the press. They're prohibited from giving their names. The government there, as well as the company there, doesn't want you to know anything about them. We can see animal life dying, and we know that just like canaries in a coal mine, that's something that we should be concerned about. But we do see things happening with the humans who were exposed. We don't know who these 50 were, but we do know that the Fukushima boss died in July of 2013. The Guardian reported this. Now, they said that he took early retirement from the plant in late 2011 after being diagnosed with esophageal cancer. They said that he was a heavy smoker, and he told everybody, the company line, the TEPCO company line, that it was from his smoking and had, of course, nothing to do with him being there for very long periods of time, being exposed to very high dosages of radiation, had nothing to do with him dying of cancer 2 years later. However, there are sailors on the USS Ronald Reagan that are not trying to cover up for the Japanese government, that are not trying to cover up for TEPCO. They are very angry about what happened to them, and they're speaking out. They're not only speaking out, but they're suing. And they have refiled this lawsuit. This came out in the middle of January. In Japan, they were working for 4 days on the Fukushima relief, and many of them returned to the U.S. with thyroid cancer, leukemia, brain tumors, and many other things. Now, these are 71 sailors. Most of them are in their 20s. We know that the risk to young children is much higher than it is for adults in their 20s. And the risk to exposure varies depending on what your age is, what your sex is, what your genetic background is. But a fetus or a young child is going to be much more susceptible to these radiation levels than the sailors. And yet we see 71 of them saying that they've come down with a wide variety of cancers. So there is something here that the government doesn't want us to talk about. We see this flow now of debris, radioactive debris, approaching the coast of California, if it's not already there from these elevated readings, but we have flippant answers that are given to us by the local authorities, or they hang up when we ask them why they are stockpiling massive doses of radiation treatment. Now, one last word here, because all of life is temporary, right? We can always handle this with just duct tape. And of course, that's what they did at Fukushima. Amazingly, we have a report from Kit Daniels. Now, a Japanese worker who spent 6 months working on the Fukushima nuclear reactor after the problems said that they were using duct tape to fix radiation leaks. And he also said that they didn't use rebar in the concrete, but just used wire mesh. An amazing story. Now, we're going to be right back after the break, and we're going to talk about some updates to global warming predictions from Al Gore, some of the amazing statements that he made. So stay tuned.
Hi friends, Alex Jones here to tell you about some of the most important information concerning you and your family's health. Radiation levels have more than doubled in the last 60 years in the Northern Hemisphere from all of the nuclear testing and radiological accidents. Radioactive contamination is now in most of the food supply. There's only two ways to avoid this. Move south of the equator or properly protect your thyroid with nascent iodine. Looking to protect my family, I've done deep research. Nascent iodine is the purest, cleanest, absolute best form of iodine to protect yourself and your family. It's made right here in the USA, completely non-GMO. I searched out the best quality and now have developed a double-strength form of nascent iodine, exclusively available at InfoWarsLife.com. Nascent iodine is on record as one of the only safe ways to detox from fluoride poisoning. Survival Shield Nascent Iodine. Secure your super high-quality nascent iodine today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.
We're on the march. The Empire's on the run. And the Infowars army is standing strong. Wake up your family, friends, and neighbors and break the matrix at InfoWarsStore.com. Learn the truth and spread the message of liberty with the world's most comprehensive collection of books and documentary films. Maintain a healthy metabolism and energize your body to perform at peak health with Survival Shield Nascent Iodine. Protect your family and be prepared with survival foods and emergency preparedness kits. And now you can drink safe water with your own ProPure water filtration system, which removes fluoride and other harmful chemicals from your family's water supply. Save 10% with the promo code WATER. So join the revolution. InfoWarsStore.com.
Welcome back. Now, Weather.com is reporting that we are having the coldest Arctic outbreaks since the 1990s. And of course, there's record cold in Chicago. That's not as significant, however, as what we see happening in the Arctic. And the irony that these global warming scientists who went up there to report about the vanishing ice cap have been stranded along with their rescuers. And of course, Al Gore told us that this would all be gone by now. There would be no Arctic ice cap. But even more significant is the fact that there hasn't been any global warming for 17 years now. It's actually been a cooling trend, even though we've had an increase in carbon dioxide. So it shows that their models have failed. It shows that the myth of man-made global warming is not happening.
With record low temperatures all over the United States and icebreakers getting stuck in, well, ice, I think now is a good time to revisit some of the top quotes from the top climate change cheerleader, Al Gore himself. Quote number 5, "Here's the truth. The earth is round. Saddam Hussein did not attack us on 9/11. Elvis is dead. Obama was born in the United States, and the climate crisis is real." This is a common tactic used by people who are trying to con you. They'll take something factual such as the earth being round and tie that into something that's not exactly proven, in this case being climate change. Quote number 4, "This is back in 2006. Many scientists are now warning that we are moving closer to several tipping points that could, within as little as 10 years, make it impossible for us to avoid irreversible damage to the planet's habitability for human civilization." Quote number 3, "The planet has a fever. If your baby has a fever, you go to the doctor. If the doctor says you need to intervene here, you don't say, 'Well, I read a science fiction novel that told me it's not a problem.' If the crib's on fire, you don't speculate that the baby is flame retardant, you take action." CO2 is the exhaling breath of our civilization, literally. Changing that pattern requires a scope, a scale, a speed of change that is beyond what we have done in the past. And as the author points out, without carbon dioxide, life would cease to exist on this planet. And for our number 1 quote, let's hear it from Al Gore himself.
Some of the models suggest to Dr. Maslowski that there is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
Not only did that not happen, but we actually have more ice in that particular location. So whether it's polar bears can't swim or giant sucking sounds are a good deal, when they try to con you, just sit back, call their bluff, and keep your money to yourself. You can find more reports at Infowars.com.
Now, in other news, the FBI has told us that it has a new mission statement. This probably doesn't come as a surprise to you if you've been following what's going on, but the FBI's primary mission is national security, not law enforcement. Well, at least in the communist countries, they were honest about what it was. They called it state security, which is really kind of a continuity of government. Here we call it national security. That's our euphemism that we use here. Now, according to Foreign Policy's report, a former FBI agent said that violent crime, property crime, and white-collar crime, all those things had reductions in the number of people available to investigate them. The special agent in charge of Chicago said, if I put more resources on violent crime, I'd have to take away from other things. Well, what other things would we be taking away from? Well, a Washington-based national security lawyer said, so many good things happen to you, your agency, when you tie it to national security. See, they're concerned only about one thing. They're concerned about security for the government. That's what they mean by national security. It's continuity of the government. They're also concerned about their job security because they're going to grow as a bureaucracy if they focus on that issue. What they're not concerned about is your security, your safety. In the war on drugs, they let violent criminals out of prisons so they could lock up nonviolent marijuana users with their mandatory minimums under Reagan's drug war. And now what we're seeing under the war of terrorism that our government is running against us, we see now that they're not really going to be focusing on violent crime. It's no more about crime. It's not about a police force. Instead, it's about getting the government's agenda for a surveillance state, for a police state, and there's a lot of money that can be had in that. Now, this is a quote from Ross Gelbspan, and he nailed it exactly. I couldn't say it any better than this. This is what he says. The FBI is a national political police force. The Bureau should be in the business of catching criminals, but he said, as a political police, they're mobilized to protect the interests of any political establishment, and it's an affront to the basic rights of free speech and association, and an insult to the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. Now, another thing we've been telling you about, of course, is the danger of vaccines. And we see this in a story from Australia. A girl falls asleep 30 times a day after taking the flu vaccine. She was vaccinated with Pandemrix in November 2009 during a flu pandemic in Australia, and she is one of at least 100 people that is now estimated to have developed narcolepsy in the aftermath of that. Without warning, she can fall asleep up to 30 times a day wherever she is, and studies have found a 10-fold increase in developing the disorder after getting the shot. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's not disputed by GlaxoSmithKline, the company that makes the drug. This is what they had to say. They don't deny that it causes narcolepsy. They said patient safety is our #1 priority, and we're researching how narcolepsy is triggered and how this vaccine might have interacted with other risk factors in affected individuals. We hope ongoing research efforts will enable us to provide more answers. Well, if you've been listening to us, you know what the answers are. You know that they're putting thimerosal, which is mercury, into the vaccines. So you know they're putting many other things in there. And you know that there are a lot of side effects to the vaccines. So their safety is clearly not there. There's also questions about their effectiveness. And we want answers about not only that, but we want answers about what's going on with the radiation. And so right after the break, we have Anthony Gucciardi calling a government representative and asking him why they're ordering 14 million dosages of potassium iodide and why they want it in just 30 days. So stay tuned.
I'll be honest with you. We're at a major crossroads. My radio show has almost become passé for many because all of the incredibly radical sounding things that we've talked about the last 18 years on air are now public knowledge. Almost everything we've discussed is now being reported by mainstream. As this tyranny is admitted, as Congress has hearings about Obama being a dictator, basically, if we don't educate the general public about this now and explain to them that if the precedent is set for the office of the presidency to be dictatorial and autocratic, that will be passed on to future generations. And that's why the new January 2014 edition of Infowars magazine is now out. And I think it's probably the best cover we have ever had. We see Obama as the classical third world dictator, and that basically is what he is becoming.
And there are 5 different articles about the transference of power and the degeneration of our republic into a bureaucratic dictatorship with the president as the dictatorial head. There's a bunch of other gun control articles and essay stories. I'm really proud of the first issue of 2014. Guaranteed 2 or 3 people that you hand them to will end up reading it. And even if somebody else doesn't read it, they'll leave it laying somewhere and somebody else will read it. This is a very effective way to wake people up. It's a great tool. Instead of costing $10, $15, $20 like a book, you can get it as low as $1 a piece in bulk to get out to your friends and family. So that's InfoWarsStore.com to subscribe to the final year of subscriptions, and you can always continue to buy them in bulk at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
It was revealed yesterday that the Department of Health and Human Services was buying up about 14 million doses of potassium iodide, which is, of course, used for nuclear disasters to block the uptake of radioactive isotopes. Now, the thing was, we found out about this through news tips from some insiders about 2-3 days ago. And I wanted to make sure, as did Alex and Paul Joseph Watson, that all of this checked out. It wasn't a routine purchase, it wasn't just a fluke or anything like that, and it was real on the Fed BizOps website, which of course is a federal government website. Now, we looked through all of the information and talked to some individuals inside the department, and yes, we found out that this purchase was indeed bizarre, but specifically, we were told that this looked like a purchase around the same time of the Fukushima incident in 2011. And this is what concerned me. This is what prompted me to release the information to look into it further. And Paul Joseph Watson organically was also doing the same thing the entire time, looking at the news tips, looking at the insider information in order to release this with full-blown information overload as to what's going on. Now, I am going to call here, recorded live, the individual, the purchasing agent responsible for the acquisition of this potassium iodide right here. We're going to call him, and I'm going to ask him a few key things. I'm going to ask him, number one, why are they purchasing 14 million doses of iodide, potassium iodide? And the thing is, a good government, a real government, a smart government would purchase potassium iodide, or more importantly, they would actually purchase nascent atomic iodine. But potassium iodide is toxic, but in event of an emergency, nuclear emergency, it is good because you would die otherwise. So a smart government would purchase a form of iodine for its citizens and encourage everyone else to do the same. So I'm actually saying that's a good thing. But they're going behind the scenes and doing this, getting their own stockpiles of potassium iodide, because 14 million doses isn't that much. That's military level or federal government level. They could help those individuals because, remember, you'll take multiple doses over weeks or months or whatever. So they're going behind the scenes and purchasing this. I'm also going to ask if it's because of Fukushima and this individual or the agency's thoughts about Fukushima. Top scientists now say that it will threaten humanity for thousands of years. They say that if it blows up and has a meltdown, which the 1,500 rods, every single one they extract, has an opportunity to do that, how they have homeless people now cleaning it up, and what their thoughts are on that. And I'm also going to ask them, you know, if they support potassium iodide and think we should all get some form of iodine, whether it's nascent, atomic, or whatever, which is, like I said, the real thing a government should be doing. So why don't we go ahead right now and set up the call line and talk to this individual.
Health and Human Services Procurement, Tim Bouchel.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Anthony Gucciardi. How are you?
I'm very well.
Great. I was just inquiring about the potassium iodide, the 14 million doses of potassium iodide on Fed BizOps. I was wondering what you could tell me about that.
I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services, and we're a medical supply and pharmaceutical depot, and it's one of the items that we stock. We stock over 4,000.
Well, I see 14 million doses. Is that routine? Do you guys usually get 14 million? Because someone I spoke to from the organization said that's a little bizarre.
No, it's given how robust that material is. It's got 7 years dating. I mean, it's no, that's. I mean, we leverage our buying power that way, using taxpayer money. I mean, that's the best deal we could get. So no, that's not out of the ordinary.
So
go ahead.
I bought
millions of doses of flu in June. So no.
Flu shot? Millions of doses of the flu shot?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not stockpiling the potassium iodide for any particular reason?
No.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you have any concerns about Fukushima, the fact that, it is melting down?
I have no idea. No, I have no idea anything about that. I purchase material for the federal government. There's no hidden agenda here.
So you don't actually know why you're buying it?
Goodbye.
Oh, wow. Well, what's interesting is that he acted as if it was a routine purchase. And then when I actually asked him what was going on, he said, well, I don't know anything. I just purchased for the federal government. Why don't we call him back one more time? Just one more time. We don't want to get into harassment territory. Just one more time. And I want to ask him to clarify his statement on the fact that he just buys for the federal government. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't care about Fukushima. They're just buying tons of iodine and potassium iodide just to stockpile it, just like they're buying billions of bullets just to help the taxpayer save money. That's why they're buying billions of rounds of ammunition. That's why they're buying 14 million doses of potassium iodide, to help the taxpayer save money.
Tim Bushell, Health and Human Services Procurement.
Hey, how's it going? This is Anthony again. Sorry to call you once more. I just really wanted to ask you a question. As a public servant, people like myself paying you to serve us, I wanted to ask you to clarify your statement that you just work for the federal government. Not that you don't have to talk to me. You hung up on me. You just work for the federal government. You just work for me. And you don't actually know why you're buying 14 million doses of potassium iodide. And that's fine. I just wanted you to clarify that statement to me. Because I've actually spoken to government insiders who actually work at this department, and they told me that it was a bizarre purchase and that it was out of the ordinary. And they also told me that there are deep concerns about Fukushima. So I wanted to get your take on that. You wouldn't comment on Fukushima, which is fine. But then you also revealed to me that you just work for the federal government. You don't really know what's going on. You're just the purchasing agent, which is fine. I just wanted you to tell me that and talk to me instead of hanging up on me, because I actually pay your salary, and as do the millions of people that will ultimately hear about this and watch this video. So please give me a call back if you would. If not, we'll just have to go on with the statements that you gave me. My name's Anthony Gucciardi. You can just call back this number. Thanks a lot. I think you should look into Fukushima, really, because even the top scientists they're called conservative by the other top scientists, say that for thousands of years we'll be threatened by Fukushima, and if it blows up, it will mean the end of Japan, quote unquote, bye-bye Japan, and we'll have to evacuate the West Coast. So I don't blame you guys if you're stockpiling the potassium iodide. I don't blame you. That makes sense. That's smart. That's what a good, real government would do, is stockpile it for the citizens. My thing is 14 million doses obviously is not enough for the citizens, and it's not even enough for most government, since the federal government is now so bloated. So please give me a call back and let me know if you want to clarify your statement. Again, I'm Anthony Gucciardi. Thanks a lot. So give me a call back if you would, please. It seems that the public servant, once again, does not want to talk to us about the open FedBizOpps deal where they want 14 million doses of potassium iodide, and he hung up on me for even inquiring about it and talking about Fukushima. And he claimed that it was just a routine purchase. Oh, this happens all the time. It's not a big deal. And then later said, hey, I just work for the federal government. I just purchase stuff. I have no idea what's going on. Wouldn't even talk about Fukushima. And then I said, well, I just want to know about some stuff. And he hung up on me. Goodbye. Hung up on me. A very good public servant that I pay for to serve this nation, no doubt. A federal government agent that is proliferating freedom and liberty throughout this nation. If they wanted to dispel these conspiracy theories that Fukushima exists and that Fukushima is a danger, and that a real smart government would actually stockpile potassium iodide and, more importantly, nascent iodine, they would stockpile that. Nascent iodine, of course, you can take every day and prepare yourself. The potassium iodide is for emergencies and actually really bad for you. So a smart, real government would tell its citizens, yes, we're stockpiling this for you and you should get some too. But instead, they're secretly going behind the scenes and ordering tons and tons of it, enough for about 12 million people, or 14 million people, and not telling you any of it. Not telling you about iodine, not telling you anything. So instead of that guy coming forward and saying, yeah, we're doing this for whatever reason, he just blackwalled me and blacklisted me and just completely is now ignoring me and will not answer any phone calls from our number at all. So I'm Anthony Gucciardi, and I encourage you to check out all the information about not only the potassium iodide that the government is ordering, but about Fukushima, because one way or another, It doesn't even matter why they're ordering it. They should order it for Fukushima and prepare the citizens of this country and worldwide. But Fukushima is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, threats we face today. Unanimously, across the board, the top experts say, yes, the 1,500 rods that they're extracting now with homeless people cleaning up the site, if one of those rubs against another, it will cause a massive meltdown that will threaten humanity for thousands of years. That's a direct quote, and it would mean bye-bye Japan. So this is serious, this is real, and it's not coming down to these weird losers at the federal government hanging up on me for asking about it. I'm Anthony Gucciardi, and keep looking for truth and information.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.